Welcome, everyone, and good whatever moment of the day you are enjoying on your time zones, whether now as you are watching or listening to our conversation live or later when you find the recording. It is a joy and a privilege to host a conversation within our October series. And this one feels so special because we will be talking about kindness. My name is Minola Jacques. I am your co host for today. We have our very own Jessa working her magic backstage. And we have two amazing speakers that will definitely inspire you with their insights and their energy. So I will ask Jessa to help me bring them up on the screen. And in the meantime, I will continue to welcome everybody. Please do drop us a short note. First and foremost, do let us know where you're engaging with us from. It's always so great to travel around the world through your comments. And also, please do consider this conversation as much your own as it is ours. And drop your thoughts, your comments, your stories in the chat, and also do engage with one another. What we've seen over the past conversations is that there is so much value in people sharing resources about the topic that they have found helpful and meaningful and thought nurturing. So please do drop us links to books, articles, any resource that will help our community in the kindest of ways. So, without further ado, we have quite a short hour ahead of us, and let's build an amazing fireside chat on kindness. The title of the panel is The Kindness Advantage: How Cultivating Kindness and Compassion Create Stronger Cultures That Deliver Business Results. I always try to make Enrique proud and read the full titles of the panels. I know that's his challenge for us all. So wonderful to see you on my screen. And we will start off calmly and kindly. A very short round of presentations. I will ask each of you to just shortly introduce yourselves. And let's set the scene. I was wondering, is there a story that comes to mind about a particular situation, event, interaction that profoundly shaped how you perceive kindness? And it can be in the workplace, it can be outside of the workplace. So, what is the story that you associate most with how you think about kindness today? And what I will do, we will go counterclockwise. Sandy, so good to see you. Welcome. It's been a while. I was looking forward to sharing a conversation with you.
Hi, I've missed you too. So my name is Sandy. Thank you for having me. And I've been doing HR for a little bit over 20 years. And I am currently the HR manager for All American Racers. And I'm trying to think of a story that would say, like, kindness. I think I would just say leaving your footprint, a good footprint, wherever you go is super important and key to provide and start cultivating and putting that seed in the ground to just, show kindness and for others to pass it along. I can't think of a good story. It caught me off guard there.
Not a problem. It's an ongoing request, so super happy to pick it up later on. Peter, a joy and a privilege to welcome you today. So happy that you are with us.
Thank you, Manola. Thank you, and hi, Sandy. Nice to see you. It's a real pleasure to be here on this call and with such an important subject. So, just a brief introduction. So, I'm Peter Kennedy. I I describe myself as an international HR exec because I spent really 20 years of my career with IBM, and also raising a family in France, in Europe. Though I'm American, I'm actually both French and American national, though I probably don't sound that. And I do speak both languages fluently after 22 years in France. And it's been an amazing experience. But I am back in Boston area now. I am my own contractor. I'm also a certified coach. And so I'm coaching and doing some contract work. Interim, looking around, seeing what's new out there. I think, the world's changing a lot and there's a lot of opportunities. So again, great to be here. Good question, Manola. Hit us with a surprise from the start. But fortunately, as like Cindy, our brains either go to an example or they don't. So my brain did go to an example. I right away thought about managing a team in Europe across 14 countries during COVID. So I managed a team of HR M&A professionals, mergers and acquisitions professionals for quite a long time. And however challenging and enriching and complicated it was to manage people from 14 different cultures, when COVID hit and we all went remote, and it was, really different flavors of remote. And all of you who are out there listening who are from different countries in Europe, including North America and South America, every country was doing things differently. And so managing the team and making sure that we were remaining productive, we still did acquisitions and strategic outsourcing deals, but that was the time I had to sit back and say, what is my role here? Everyone is sitting from home. Do we continue to talk about work all the time? Or do we focus most of our time to talk about our experiences and our trauma in many cases? And so, really I developed some roundtables using Zoom, first time sort of, even though it was IBM, we weren't really doing that much video conferencing. So that was kind of new. And the power of people sharing to uplift and help people overcome, all of the challenges and emotional difficulty around COVID was phenomenal. And it was truly based in kindness and, what I like to call compassion, like really doing things for people, which I know we'll talk more about in this call. So that really comes to mind. And I take that with me as a leader now, as I watch the world sort of evolve into a more normalized state, post-COVID, whatever that means, and hope that other leaders who've observed those kinds of the need for kindness and compassion during COVID, that we don't forget that. And I think there's a fear that may happen, that we may get back. So I'll not go too much deeper, but that you triggered an interesting thought process, Manola, and that I know that Cindy and I will carry that forward in the questions. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. And I keep looking at the comments and I see that we really have people from all around the world. And this comes with huge gratitude, but also with a huge request for help to elevate our conversation. We will touch on this later on, but kindness and compassion, they have so many nuances across cultures and across different environments. So please do let us know, what does kindness looks like to you? What does it sound like in your own workplaces? And we will definitely bring your highlights and your comments into our conversation. So when I knew that this would happen today, and it already feels like a gift, this summer I discovered a book, more like the book discovered me. I have this theory that books find people when we need them. And I took it out of my bookshelves. It's called Deep Kindness. And it is a book written by a guy called Houston Kraft. And it breaks down kindness into 3 layers. He talks about common kindness, which is basically the thank yous and pleases and, the politeness and pleasantry. Then there's the confetti kindness, which is pretty much the feel-good kind of kindness, that you see on posters with like, pay it forward or pay a coffee for someone or just sprinkle kindness everywhere. It's free. Sprinkle it like confetti. And while confetti kindness is important, it does sometimes make kindness feel effortless, or, you do it when it's easy and you do it when it's available. And then deep kindness, it stands for something that you do beyond selfishness, oftentimes beyond fear, with resilience and with commitment that over time proves that you're giving and you're caring. They are completely context, convenience, or circumstance agnostic. Now, what do you think about when you think about kindness? What is kindness to you? And I am curious if, in any way, kindness in our personal lives is different than kindness within the workplace. And given the fact that it's just the two of you, let's not go into the unmuting competition and just build your conversation.
Do you want to go first, Peter, or do you want me to go?
If something's coming to you, Sandy, go for
Okay.
it. Otherwise,
So I've found a quote that, you know, really just to me just kind of sums it up, right? It's kindness is giving hope to those who think they are all alone in this world. And it's that's more of that deep kindness, not that superficial kindness, right? Or where you're simply like, you know, Manola was saying, the please and the thank yous. That's more of when you see someone that is struggling. And sometimes you also have to take into consideration that those that smile the biggest are also, you know, struggling, and they just learn to mask it more. So sometimes just knowing that person, getting to know and understanding your friends, your relatives, your family, your employees, who you work with, and knowing when they're not okay, and you just step in and say, hey, or here's, you know, sometimes a simple thing of here's a quote, here's a, you know, a coffee, here's just even a simple compliment like, oh, you know what, that shirt is really flattering on you. You know, because we have to be careful as well, you know, in the workplace we got to be careful with how we give compliments. But just that simple, you know, that simple small touch. I am big on glitter. I am big on sparkles. So to me, and fairy dust, okay? I'm big on fairy dust. So to me, it's about going around and just sprinkling that fairy dust all over and leaving your footprints, you know, where like your footprints and it's like glittery and it glows like that. That's what deep kindness to me is. And just planting those seeds from the start with our kids, from our youth, you know, being a mentor, even simply being a mentor is showing kindness because you're sharing your experiences, the good, the bad, of what you've gone through so that others can learn from your mistakes. To me, that's kindness.
Mm.
nice, Sandy. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's interesting because I know I'm sure Sandy, you know, Sandy and I, since we've agreed to come on this, we've been reading a lot, and because it's great, and I love being incented to read about things that we kind of thought we knew, and then you realize, oh, there's a lot of interesting ideas out there. And one of the so Manola, you did an interesting breakout of kindness, and I think the way I've been thinking about it in reading has been really getting it a little bit another level, sort of what is compassion, what is empathy, and what is sympathy, and what is pity. And so we've got like pity. I was reading something originally, this idea that pity is, you know, feeling sorry for someone. So is that kindness? You know, if you're not doing anything, that's not right. That's just sort of looking at someone from a distance. Sympathy is feeling for someone. So, oh, I give you my sympathy. I send you the card of sympathy. I'm feeling for you. Empathy, we're feeling with someone. So that's getting closer, right? We're getting into kindness. And I think kindness is about having a strong sense of empathy, of feeling someone's suffering, feeling someone's emotions, you know, listening actively to see if we're catching all the nuance of the person's experience. And yet empathy without action, so without action is just empathy. And it can be really debilitating. I mean, if you're a highly empathic person, and I'm sure a lot of us are out there, it can be really, really triggering and difficult in these times, especially. And so compassion is, you know, is like action with empathy. So really reaching out, doing something for someone, really making a difference, almost like removing yourself from yourself and, from your ego and serving the other person. And so kindness for me, like the epitome of kindness is like the empathy plus action. So, really feeling with someone and doing something to alleviate their suffering or to help them develop. Right. And so when I was thinking about leaders, because your other question was like, how is it with leaders? One of the difference and leaders these days, especially with, again, post-COVID, people working from home, people taking care of elderly people, elder care, child care, all of these important things. I think leaders now have the challenge of getting to another level of finding ways to be truly compassionate while delivering difficult messages. Right? And I'm sure we'll get into that later because this is a really big piece of HR, right? And the whole traditional model. So I think the excellent leaders, the ones that we've had, are the ones who are truly compassionate, who have our backs, but who are able to give us really good feedback about improving, even though it's difficult. So the leaders who have somehow overcome the guilt or the negative feelings of delivering a hard message to someone you care about with the intent of advancing them. And so that's where I see the intersection with leaders. There's a huge intersection with leaders. Very important.
I love how you make my job so easy and you drop these conversation candies. I just need to go back and collect them. Now, before we move into delivering, difficult messages or going through times of disruption, let's go back and discuss a little bit. What does an organizational culture look like where there's balance between high performing focus and also kindness and compassion? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And I'm super curious whether you can also give us some pointers on how does it sound like?
I would say, in my perspective, and this is just my opinion, I think that a high performing, high productive, and a culture that shows kindness is kind of like a relationship where, we always hear it has to be 50-50. No, some days I can only perform at my 40. So I cannot give you 50%. So the company being able to actually grab that other 10 and say, you know what, I know today you're struggling, so I'm gonna put in that extra 10 and I'm gonna actually carry that additional for you right now, and vice versa. Where sometimes as employees, we go above and beyond, and so it's a give and take. And I think that if there's recognition for when the employee goes above and beyond, if there's understanding of, hey, I have a little one at home and daycare just called me and I have to run out to pick him up because he has a fever, and being able to kind of work together. And it's not necessarily to where, oh, great, she has another emergency. Nothing like that, where it's judged or where it's, where the employees are put to shame. So I think just something that actually really works together would be something where we meet each other at its needs, right? The company meets the employee at its needs, and we meet the company at where we're needed, right? And just working together, and just that being transparent, being vulnerable, being able to share, with your manager, or your manager being able to share with you, like, hey, you know what? Today I have a really big headache. So, I might not be in the best of moods, and being able to be okay with just saying it. Because sometimes, oh, I just started. I don't want to share this. I don't want to share that. Or my manager seems really mean. Or, I've heard how, somebody said they were sick and he just told them to get over it. Just being able to create that culture where it's a give and take, and teaching our managers, our leads, our supervisors to be willing to open up, in some cultures, it's difficult, it's challenging for, individuals to open up. And even in some industries, it's a little bit harder for, and I'm not trying to bash you guys, but, for men to actually open up and be vulnerable and be willing to share, and in some industries, um, that's what you have majority. You have men, and they're the ones that are leading, right? So we need to work with them even more to get them to kind of bring that wall down, get them to open up more, get them to be willing to share, and just be willing to explore new avenues to make their employees happy, and so that they can be happy as well.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And you said something, Cindy, about, there's something about acknowledging that, everyone has days when they're not performing as well. Everyone can fail. And in my view, that's recognizing the humanity at work, right? That we have a shared humanity, and acknowledging that we're all humans, and that no matter what level we are, we all at times fail according to our own criticism, but then the criticisms of the systems around us. So for me, a high performance culture, and how this works is, in a high performance culture, first and foremost, you need to expect your leaders to be high performers. And by that, I don't mean delivering the revenue every quarter or the profit every quarter. That's a given, right? I mean, that's been the case for decades. That's been the boring measure for decades. Of course, we need to do that, so it's not boring. Companies aren't around if we don't do it. But to have leaders who acknowledge that a key part of their role is building a trust in their relationships with their teams by walking the talk and truly showing that they can be compassionate through difficult conversations, is a high performing culture. And so it's a company, an organization that's able to have leaders who are wise enough to know what needs to be done to reach a goal, and keep that wisdom clear in their mind and as a rational objective, because they're the leaders, but at the same time deliver the messages to their teams in a compassionate way with empathy. So what I mean is, if performance management, as a classic example, a high performing culture is one that has a performance management system that requires leaders to give regular iterative feedback throughout the year, so that they have transparency of expectations for their teams, from the top down. What's our mission? What's our goals for the year? And as those change, be transparent, to give feedback then to each employee according to how they're doing against those goals. And when employees are not doing as well, and we're talking high performance culture here, to be able to give candid, transparent feedback that may be difficult and unexpected by the employee, but is necessary from a wise perspective to move the goal towards the goal, but to do so in a way that is empathetic. So to do so in a way that allows individuals to be heard and seen, and to Sandy's point, to be given an opportunity to change, to improve, and to progress with the organization.
Mm. I have to admit that I am still under the joyful influence of the People Analytics Summit from yesterday and before, the day before yesterday. And we had such amazing conversations around employee engagement and employee motivation and retention and all the goodies that come with people analytics. And I was wondering, how can we use some of the data and people analytics language and power when we come to talk about kindness and compassion? Are there any data points that we can use in our advantage to at least spark conversations in the workplace about kindness and how that contributes to a high performing organization? Any thoughts, Peter?
Yeah. So there's this great book. that I've been loving called Compassionate Leadership. Highly recommended. I'm not being paid for this. And by Rasmus Hogard and Jacqueline Carter. And it's interesting because they've got enormous data set. I won't go in and read it, but you can all read but they're talking about 300 odd executives, thousands of employees across 5,000 companies globally. And they've collected data, and their data has shown very clearly that, through rational measurement, that leaders who are both compassionate and lead with clarity is what they call wisdom, being wise and compassionate, have reporting from their teams show statistically significant improvements in job satisfaction, organizational commitment, job performance, job engagement, leader satisfaction, and decreased burnout. The subject pool is huge. This isn't just a quantitative research. It's not just qualitative, it's quantitative. And then they have a ton of information from qualitative in terms of interviews with leaders, and there's a lot to go into. But that says a lot when I read that, right? And there was some other sort of studies with 1,200 respondents that found that 77% of job seekers believe that having kindness as part of a value proposition in the company is significant in terms of their interest in the company. So, I mean, if we talk about how HR affects the bottom line, it's all about retention, motivation, attraction of talent. And this is all about that. And so it directly impacts productivity of the company. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for. There's some data there. I'm sure there's more.
Thank you.
I agree with Peter. I mean, all of that is so important. Like mission statement. If your mission statement, with what he was, saying in regarding that, what was it, 77%?
Yeah.
Of candidates.
Yeah.
What does your mission statement say? Does it say, welcome, come and work for us? We're kind. We're gonna meet you halfway, or not halfway, but we're gonna meet you at your point of need, or what does it say? So super, super important.
Yeah. And I think post COVID, I'm sure before it was important, but post COVID, I keep saying this, but the importance of mental health and wellness, and these things are spiking off the charts right now in terms of employee sentiment. And you're right, Sandy, if a company doesn't even put it in their statement, that's like low hanging fruit. But then the challenge is really walking the talk and having the leaders truly show it, because smart employees see this right away, that the culture is what people are actually doing.
The benefits that we offer. What are the benefits? Like for example, now there's certain states that you have to put what benefits you're offering, what's the salary range, and all that good stuff, right?
Right.
And so if your benefits don't actually speak to mental health, to what is it called? Let's say, for example, other incentives like employee discounts and things like that. If your benefits don't talk about any of that stuff, bringing in talent is also going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. So it starts with us in the sense of, we gotta make sure our job descriptions that we're posting out there are spot on to the talent that we want to bring.
Yeah.
And who we are as a company, but we have to be able to have those resources for those employees. So, we have to fight those battles at the end of the day, right? We're the ones that are like pushing our leadership and saying, I need, $5,000 for this. And, and sometimes it gets approved, sometimes it doesn't. So you got to keep fighting that fight. So.
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned, Sandy, about, other data. There's some other data. There's sort of demographic data around the types of leaders who are better at the compassion stuff. I'm not talking about the empathy. I think everybody's sort of born with some empathy, but the compassion of actually walking the talk. No question, women leaders are kicking it off the chart, and it's not a surprise. I mean, I won't go into what we think are the differences and why. And I know, but this data, this was a global set, was women leaders were bringing in much more, showing more quantifiable behaviors that, that support compassionate practices.
Mm.
And the other interesting information out there on data, Manola, since you asked for data, is the neurological information on kindness / compassion. And, there are some fascinating work out there with neurological scientists showing that people who display acts of compassion, kindness, are triggering endorphins in the brain. And these are, a variety of endorphins which stimulate pleasure activities, positive activities, including oxytocin, which is associated with collaboration and increased eye contact, and even lactating mothers for babies have higher levels of oxytocin. So it's all about like really, really entrenched, coded in our brains. We do well when we stimulate more kindness and compassion from a collaborative social setting. And so companies today who are working more in a collaborative way, with service being more important than just product, the skills needed around collaboration, innovation, and creativity are so much more important for productivity of the company than in the old days where we were in the factory and it was very sort of algorithmically driven, process. So that's just a whole nother area that's fascinating if people are interested in researching.
Thank you so very much for bringing the conversation to this point. And I just took a quick peek at the clock, and believe it or not, we're already halfway through our time together. So just a quick welcome to everybody who joined us a little bit later. And no worries if you missed some parts of our awesome conversation. You can find the recording either here on the LinkedIn space just a little bit later, or on hackinghrlab.io. Now, I do want to honor the energy that came up very, very early in our conversation about kindness and compassion for difficult conversations in the workplace, whether we talk about conversations that must be had during times of disruption, especially disruptions that come with job loss, or site closures, or really, really big, unsettling changes. How do these conversations sound like in an organization that does have kindness and compassion embedded at their very core? And Peter, I know that you were you are dying to get to this part, so please lead us into this.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's just such an interesting area and an evolving area. So I think these hard decisions are being made all the time. And so a company that is embedded in compassion and kindness, again, has a leadership culture that from the top, from as early as possible, is communicating openly in a transparent way down to the teams, down to the wider employee populations, and managers having individual discussions around individual progress against their goals vis-a-vis how the company's doing, so that when hard decisions for financial reasons need to be made, first and foremost, this isn't a major surprise to people. So in other words, trust has been built up so that the messaging being sent iteratively is being believed. And so the conversations can begin. When the hard decisions have to be made, that's where the leadership teams really come to play, in especially identifying and working with thought leaders within the various teams to explain what the options are, and explore at the individual level what would serve the individual best first and foremost. Take the time to really be compassionate, be thoughtful about how the individual is versus, you know, you're out of a job tomorrow, pack up and go. I mean, the destruction that kind of approach takes in terms of the brand image and, you know, culture, the culture who's retained is enormous. I mean, it's a very destructive approach, and so I guess I just see it as sort of really basic communication, being transparent up front, uh, being able to have those performance discussions in a way that's happening regularly throughout the year, so that we can either say, Manola, unfortunately, your job itself is going away. This is very unfortunate. We've tried everything possible, but you and I have talked about, what areas of strengths you have and what are the interests you may have to develop. And you have done these great things to develop that. So let's talk about what options you have both in the company and out of the company. And then we put it, we have as a dialogue versus me as a manager telling you some bad news. We're empowering people to make their own decisions given the information. That's my take on that.
And I'm just going to add to what Peter was saying regarding, like the delivery and all of that. Big key things is knowing your audience, knowing your staff, and really taking that time to get to know them, not just on a professional level, but that personal level. Um, but keeping it also to where you don't overstep, because sometimes when we give feedback, let's say for example, okay, somebody we know, their mom or their dad, they've been really sick and they're not performing at their standard, right? And we know that's going on because they've been needing to take time off, or they've actually like just shared like, hey, this is going on, I'm not okay. I might, not be my super, awesome, perky self, for these reasons. But just being able to have that conversation, taking into account that sometimes they're not ready to hear that feedback because in their mind, you can give them all the feedback you want, but they're thinking about that problem that they're having at home. They're thinking about, can I trust the daycare where I just dropped off my child, or that kind of stuff, So just really big for me is just know the employee you have, really get to know them, doing one-on-ones, in checking in on them, making that available to them to where they can come and talk to you about everything and anything, where you actually share, hey, I'm not having a good day, or, oh, today was great, or yesterday was great. Thank you so much for helping out with XYZ, just having those conversations, communication, and having those open lines, very open lines, I think is super important when it comes down to, providing feedback and being willing and able to take that feedback, whether it's an easy delivery, because sometimes we can say it with the sweetest words, we can add honey to it and some sugar on there. But if the employee or the person we're trying to give that feedback to does not, is concerned about something completely different, they're not going to receive it, whether it's what the best intentions or not. So us knowing the right time to deliver those messages, it's also super important. Whether it's good or bad, it's important. It's key.
Yeah, 100% swing, Cindy. And that's, and that's a challenge for managers, because that's a big ask. And often when the difficult decisions come, there's been possibly years where the good decisions were made. Oh, you got a salary increase. Yeah, you got this new benefit. Your 401k match has gone up, whatever it is. And so that requires a lot of training, and the kind of behavior you're describing as coaching behavior. It's listening intently, not assuming the other person's experience. There's nothing worse than that, walking in, oh, I know you've got this concern. It's not, wait, wait, wait. You may be missing something 100 completely, which to the extent that you can identify that and acknowledge it, you're continuing to build trust. And the more trust there is, the less hard it is to deliver those hard messages because it comes from a genuine place.
I would like to invite you to do something, and this is something that I've been doing for quite some time now, whether at my work or at my passion, which is the Hacking HR conversation space, and that is making sure that the conversation is holistic and wholesome. We so oftentimes hear about it's leaders' responsibilities and managers are accountable. And I was wondering, what does kindness and compassion to the leaders and managers from their teams and from the people around them, from maybe even their peers, looks like in the workplace? Because otherwise I have this feeling that it's a bit of a lopsided conversation if it's just the leaders and the managers' accountability to drive this. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great point, Manola. The lonely role of the leader.
Mm.
Uh, I jest, but yeah. And the accountable leader who is wise enough and compassionate to deliver the tough messages. So I think, again, that's part of, there's no question that the higher you move up in an organization in terms of your leadership responsibilities and scope, there's no question it becomes more lonely. It just is by definition. And also the higher you move, up into the C-suite, you're having to make decisions that are particularly empathetic around large numbers of people and less individuals. And so you're increasingly perceived as someone who possibly is more remote and isn't getting it. And so it's especially hard to show that you are truly empathetic for the individual, but you don't have the time often to spend with individuals. And so the role of the surrounding peers is critical. So first and foremost, a leader's peers and their leader, if they have one, if it's not the board, but even the board, right, could should and must equally display that level of compassion that that Cindy was just describing, and empathy. It's hard though. It's a hard. The reverse side of having teams, expecting teams to respond in a understanding kind way back to their managers, especially in hard situations, really depends. I think it really depends on the circumstances. And I think part of being a leader is expecting that you're not going to always get that. And then that part of delivering those messages is you're going to have a percentage of your team that's going to be really disrupted and angry. And they'll have their emotional reactions. And it's, nevertheless, I do believe that what we've been talking about of giving regular, constant feedback as a leader to your teams and, expecting them to stretch themselves to, for new opportunities, but having their back if they don't completely deliver on that, and not call it a failure, but call it a learning experience. All of that engenders the trust that when you need it as a leader, you're probably going to get some compassion and empathy. That's been my personal experience. I mean, not from every one of my teams, but leading teams. If you walk the talk genuinely, people care for you. It's a family, and that's not a tall order. I mean, we do that at home, hopefully, with our families, and I think that can be the same principles in teams. It's just more complicated, I think. It's a good question.
Thank you, Peter. Sandy.
I would definitely say one key thing would be treat others the way they want to be treated. Not just it's not a one size fits all, right? Just treat it, how we've always grown up with treat them the way they treated you. No, or treat them the way you want to be treated. No, it's about treat them the way they want to be treated, because what I'm okay with doesn't mean that Manola's going to be okay with, or that Peter's going to be okay with. My, the way people approach me might be completely something that they can take offense to. So just being able to understand that it's not a one size fits all, and kindness doesn't look the same for everybody. Empathy, sympathy, compassion doesn't look the same way. And to me, it goes back to the theory of the love languages, because everybody has a love language. And so, not just the way they give their love, but the way they want to receive the love back, right? And so, just kind of understanding that, just because Manola likes to receive flowers doesn't necessarily mean I like flowers. What if I like chocolates instead? And that's what makes me happy. So, just that aspect of it, and really taking that opportunity to, even as peers, like, perfect example, let's say someone that I have here that's actually a peer of mine, she loves cows. So I know as a fact that if I'm out anywhere and I see something that's cow related, you know what, even if it's a little pen that has a cow on it and I bring it to her, she's going to appreciate the fact that I just took time out of my day to just simply purchase a pen that might have cost me a quarter, a dollar, but just the time, the thought that I took is what's going to make her happy, right? Because that's her interest. But, so I mean, that's just, to me, that's what is important, I think.
I think it's great. I'm just like, new ideas that come to my mind as you're talking, Spenny. This other thing I think that we're not catching is asking for feedback as well, right? As leaders, right? I mean, making call okay to give feedback starts with asking for it, and always asking others if they're ready to hear feedback before you give the feedback. So like, that's culture setting right there. That's cues. And then ask for feedback of others. And then as a leader, you're going to create this virtuous cycle, hopefully, if you're doing other things right, if you're being genuine, that in hard times, as a leader, you will also get the compassion and the empathy from others, because you created a culture, sort of a feedback loop that I think that's a really important one.
Sandy, your mention there of love languages triggered a thought, and I linked it back to Peter highlighting, the importance of tough conversations, fierce conversation, whatever we call them, brave conversations even. And I remember, a podcast. I can't remember the podcast itself, but I remember the topic. And someone mentioned in that podcast episode the importance of the conflict languages, because we pay so much attention to the love languages, but also an act of kindness and compassion can be staying mindful and respectful and compassionate with how ourselves and people around us express conflict and friction. So I just wanted to make a point that absolutely love languages, and we can make the analogy in the workplace, but also as an act of kindness and compassion is learn the conflict languages, your own, and also the conflict languages of the people around you. Now, as I was listening to our conversation, I feel that there is a very strong undercurrent of psychological safety for all these wonderful things that we've been inspiring people for, that is there. And Sandy, I remember we shared so many panels before on vulnerability, on psychological safety, and I would really invite you to lead us into this. How is psychological safety and trust, how do they come into the picture?
I really think that the way they come into the picture is just, can I truly, genuinely say, I feel that I'm in a place where I actually feel not just physically, but that my emotions, my family are safe here in the workplace. And what I mean by family is I have, to take my 3-year-old to daycare, let's say, and, or he has a play or anything like that. That's what I mean by family. So is it a safe place for me to really just be me, to where I can come in, and whether it's, what, and nowadays, we have a lot more people that have tattoos, and it's still very taboo, or we have individuals that perhaps they identify as a he or a she. Are we making our work environment where we're including everybody, where we're inclusive, where they can feel they belong, that they are one of us? How welcoming are we when they come in for an in-person interview or even a Zoom call? How welcoming are we? Are we on the phone like, oh, uh-huh, okay, like all of that? I think just is very important and very key to make someone feel safe. If they're bringing up a topic to you and instead you don't say, hey, I'm listening, but I'm writing my notes down because I want to make sure that I'm able to help you. It's one thing, but if you don't take the time to say, hey, I'm going to write down notes, and you're over here writing, or you're over here on the phone typing perhaps the notes, but you're not sharing that, how can they feel safe? So I think it's just psychologically is the belonging, the being included, the being safe, portion of everything, and how it to ties down, or what it comes down to being feeling safe physically and feeling safe mentally. Just the inclusion. Can I be me? Can I be silly? Can I bring, I love plants. Can I bring my plants to work, and have where my office is decorated in unicorns or Hello Kitty or whatever it could be, right? Can I do that? Can I be me? Can I create a safe place where I can be me? To me, that's what
Yeah.
I feel would be part of feeling safe, and the psychological part of it.
Well, spot on. I think you've hit everything. And the other thing is, it's over time, but less and less. There's just less and less of a separation between work and life, and when work has become part of life and life has naturally become part of work, um, it brings all the emotion and feelings of our life into the workplace. And leaders need to embrace that somehow, and it's a new call to leaders, and that is really the psychological safety. Uh, it's being seen, being heard, being trusted, so that when I want to speak about anything, I can to my manager and not be made wrong, or have something detrimental happen to me from a career or project perspective.
Mm.
Mm.
I heard both of you mention coaching, mentoring, the mindset and the skill sets around those. And I also picked up on some comments here around learning and development and just overall training around this kind of human skills. And I was wondering, the thing that I loved about the definition of deep kindness is this: doing it resiliently, beyond fear, and oftentimes beyond instances where it was misunderstood or taken for granted or even abused. So I am wondering, if you were in a situation to mentor or coach a leader that took back kindness and took back compassion because they were so oftentimes
Mm.
misreceived. How would you go about it?
Mm. So I would, I mean, there are a lot of areas to focus on with leaders in this area, but I think one of them is to explore how they're doing on self-compassion.
Mm.
Whether they're taking the time out of their work, whether they're just like keeping busy, 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 and therefore not listening to others and not listening to themselves, which we know a lot of those people out there, or whether they're truly finding ways to structure their work, to structure their days, to be kind to themselves first and foremost, to explore maybe with a coach, maybe with someone, a good friend, someone, a colleague, what's really happening with them. Because it's going to be seen, they're going to be transparent. And I truly believe it has to start there. No leader can walk the talk and show compassion and kindness if they're not showing it to themselves. They can start to do it, but they're not going to be ultimately genuine when the hard times come. So I would start with that.
That's a great starting point.
I would say Peter kind of took away from the self-compassion part of it, because sometimes, that's where we need to start, I believe, as well. But I would probably say just really also exploring the way they felt when that happened to them. Have they overcame that aspect of it? If they haven't overcame that, sometimes training and coaching is not going to help if we don't actually take the time to really just get through that first initial, whether we felt, or whether they felt, I should say, to where they were perhaps misunderstood, or where they were rejected, because sometimes even as leaders, the self-esteem, it's still perhaps low, right? And so a small rejection that way, or being misunderstood, can backfire very, very much, right? So just first, I would also say just being able to do that aspect of it. Have you gotten through it? Have you gotten past it? And if they haven't gotten past it, let's work on getting them past that first. So that this way, when they're ready, it's like being heartbroken, right? When you're in a relationship, you're heartbroken. You don't jump into the next relationship, or you shouldn't jump into the next relationship, I should say, with all the broken parts, right? Because you're just carrying it with you. Instead, if you're heartbroken, take time to heal first before you jump into something else, because all it's going to do is that new relationship is just going to trigger you. Little things are going to happen that will trigger, right? So let's work on fixing and getting past that first, so that we can actually get to a
And
place where.
And Sandy, you're right. Like if you're broken in a relationship, if you're really broken, you go see a therapist or someone, and a leader who's got some issues sees a coach. And I think an organization that's really true to their values about being a compassionate, kind organization is a coaching organization, and they invest in that, and not just in their top leaders, but in their managers as well. Like even more importantly, in my opinion. And because otherwise we're stuck. But coupled with training, I think a lot of companies are done away with training, or have gone to just sort of prepackaged online training. And I'm not against that. There's some great stuff out there, and why reinvent the wheel when it's content that you need to learn. But if you don't couple it with the types of coaching to facilitate each individual to integrate the learning, but just throw them back into the fray and expect them to take what they learned, that's not how the brain works.
Thank you so very much. And we are, this is painful to say, we are 3 minutes away from saying goodbye. So, Sandy, if you have a story that came to mind now, I would invite you to share it now before we move into our mic drop, wrap up, punchline round. So, what's your story with kindness, Sandy?
So my story with kindness, it's a personal one, and it's a small one, but I think it will help you understand that sometimes the small things are the big things. So you guys have kind of heard me say a 3-year-old. I have a 3-year-old little kiddo. And so he was just diagnosed with autism. So he's still very nonverbal. So sometimes he cannot tell me what he needs or what he wants, right? But he'll bring me stuff. And so I have to figure out what those needs are, right? But when I fix the issue, and I'll give you a perfect example, he brought me a little truck that kind of detaches, but because he knows it can be attached back, but he doesn't know quite how to do it himself just yet. And again, with kids that are autistic, sometimes it takes a few more times than a normal kid would take to grasp the concept of clicking it back in, right? He was having a full, like, it's broken meltdown. I literally just snap it back on. And I was in the middle of doing dishes, and this is the reason why it's so key to that detail. I'm doing dishes, I'm busy. He's having a meltdown. And all it took, it was just that snapping back of that truck and that little, cargo thing where he goes, there, thank you. And that smile. So it's just stopping what you're doing it's an act of kindness. That small thing to us that was small might be a big thing to somebody else. And just taking that time to just be like, oh, okay, here you go. Made that moment for him, like tears were gone, everything was gone, and it's just that there, thank you, and walks away. Sometimes just something as simple as that.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Now we are right on time, but I will just take a few more seconds. If you were someone in the audience and you only have a few seconds with a senior leader in your organization, and you have one half a sentence, we must walk the talk of kindness and compassion because. What would follow after because?
Because our teams will only be their best, and therefore we will only be our best.
Thank you.
I'm at loss for words there. I would say because helping others helps us. It's kind of coinciding with what Peter is saying, but that's the only thing I can think of at the moment. I mean,
yeah, that's wonderful.
We agree. We're in violent agreement, Sandy.
Yes, we are.
I mean, that's it.
In kind violent agreement. Thank you
Yes.
both so very, very much. Thank you, everybody in the audience, for being here and taking the time and the curiosity to sit with this topic and sit with our conversation. We do hope that you will continue to talk about this within your workplaces, around your workplaces. Sandy, Peter, I hope I will have the gift of welcoming you again soon. Thank you, everyone. Do keep an eye on our LinkedIn space and on our platform. And also, thank you so much, Jessa, for taking good care of us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Peter. It was nice sharing the stage with you.
Saying what a pleasure.
Bye, Manola.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.